Hello everyone! I'll be discussing the second movement of Robert Muczynski's 3 Preludes. This is such a beautiful and expressive movement, and I'll be walking you through some areas to be aware of while you prepare it, as well as some ideas for making it your own and bringing out the atmosphere of the movement. To begin with, this movement is in 6/8. But I would suggest that in order to keep the musical line really flowing, you end up, eventually, thinking of it in 2 big beats per bar. First, practice with a metronome on each of the 6/8 notes in the bar, and as you become very comfortable with that, start thinking in these bigger, sweeping beats. Since Muczynski marks this movement freely, feel at liberty to use a good amount of rubato within these big beats after you become truly confident in the rhythm using a metronome. One way to create this rubato, for instance, could be to sit a little longer on the high point of a phrase and then gain that time back as the phrase descends to make a really beautiful overall sweeping motion. This movement should almost sound as though it's being improvised, even though you will play it with a huge amount of control and planning. Making that illusion come alive is an important part of creating a convincing interpretation. Make sure to make a clear difference between the 3-note pickups that are tongued and the pickups that are not tongued, such as in measure 4, as well as the pickups that have tenutos, such as in measure 13. All 3 of these should sound very different, and you can be creative in coming up with ways to inflect these differences. Perhaps one type of 3-note pickup could move forward into the next downbeat, while another type could hold back the tempo slightly. Be sure to plan out your breathing carefully. Generally, breathing between a quarter note or a dotted note and the pickups that come after it is a good policy, such as between the C and the B in measure 6. Try to keep a minimum of 2-bar phrases between breaths and breathe in the same part of the phrase every time. One way to create interest in the middle section, from measures 9 to 15, is to vary the color that you use in the phrase beginning in measure 10 with the color you use in the phrase beginning in measure 11, which starts the same way. Play around with different inflections there to make sure that the music doesn't start to sound repetitive. Going into the second last phrase, make sure you take a fantastic breath in measure 20 or measure 21, so that you can give a brilliant forte and diminuendo on the high G. That's going to take lots of air, so make sure to keep the air moving as you make the diminuendo, so that it doesn't fall flat or crack down. One way I like to think about my crescendos and diminuendos is with vowel sounds. Try moving from an ah vowel in the forte to an oo vowel in the piano, and keep the air just as fast while the embouchure hole gets smaller. Enjoy working on the second movement of Robert Muczynski's 3 Preludes. It's a beautiful moment of reflection between 2 very energetic outer movements, and we would love to hear you at your most imaginative and your most expressive when we hear you play the andante molto.